I'll let Scott Broom pick it up from here.
The public comments opposing the widening of the Beltway in 270 came during, you guessed it, a Zoom meeting.
There will be more telework in the future.
The voices you hear are members of the public commenting by phone.
Telework and other COVID-19 effects and other transportation options will permanently upend traffic patterns and flatten the peak hour commute.
These are people who are against Maryland Governor Larry Hogan's plan to contract with a private developer to widen both 270 and the Maryland side of the Capital Beltway. In exchange, the developer would keep much of the toll money from the toll lanes built to pay back the multi-billion-dollar cost of the project.
The project partnership will design, build, finance, operate, and maintain new lanes on all of I-270 and I-495.
As seen in this state-produced video, it's called a P3 project for public-private partnership. And Montgomery County, where homes in Parkland may be condemned, has become the hotbed of resistance. Opponents have seized on the traffic easing effects of telework during the pandemic as proof that future changes in telework or public transit could make big road widening projects obsolete. Casey Anderson is director of Montgomery County's Planning Board.
So if you're expecting to pay for the project with toll revenue, but travel demand is suppressed, what does that say about whether or not the project can be financed?
This Department of Transportation chart shows traffic volume is still down 16.7% over the same time last year with reduced congestion. But state authorities remain committed to the widening. As restrictions have been lifted and businesses have reopened, traffic volumes have steadily increased, wrote DOT spokesperson Aaron Henson in a statement to WUSA 9. Population in the National Capital Region is anticipated to grow by 1.3 million by 2045 and to add 1 million new jobs over the same period. The solutions we're developing are not only about solving today's congestion challenges, but also about advocating multimodal solutions, including telework, ride-sharing, transit, and infrastructure improvements that are adaptable to the growth expected in the region over the long term. As far as the state's concerned, those solutions include widening 270 and the Capital Beltway in Maryland with toll lanes. Scott Broom, WUSA 9.